In your open, you were talking about whether or not the prosecution is going to relax or is going to rest based on the information that they already have. I think it's going to be quite the opposite. There's going to be a race to find out as much information about movements of Brian Kohlberger, obviously before the murders and post the murder time till the time when he was taken into custody. There's going to be a treasure trove of information that's available to investigators to find out what his movements may have been, searches that he'd done on his computer. We've gone over all the different things that we think. And again, there's going to be both sides. Prosecution is going to be doing their due diligence. They have an obligation to present the best case possible when you're going to charge someone with a capital crime, especially capital crime of murder, one murder first degree charges. And the defense is going to be out there trying to come up with some exculpatory evidence that could exonerate Kohlberger in this case. So again, both teams are probably working very hard to conduct as much investigative information as possible. I think that the prosecution, you talked about the prosecutor there, I believe his name was Bill Thompson. How much trial experience does he have? Never mind murder cases, that there hasn't been a murder in 7 years in Idaho, but as the district attorney or the prosecutor in that jurisdiction, how many cases has he actually tried? How many times has he gone to trial with a case and seen it through from beginning to end? That's going to be very important. Now, I know he's going to have a second chair. He's going to have possibly an outside assistant from another jurisdiction that would maybe third chair, the prosecution. But again, those are very, very good points that you brought up, Billy. How much experience does he have in the courtroom? Because as you know, the courtroom is a very, very tough battle to wage. It's not easy to get points across. The judge can overrule you, or there could be objections, different things like that. And it's very, very, you're in the spotlight, so to speak. It's very difficult to be effective in a courtroom unless you have that experience. You've been through it before. It's like anything else. Practice makes perfect, as they say. But the one thing he is going to have on his side is he's going to have a tremendous investigative team. You had the state police, you had the local police in Moscow, and you had the FBI, which is the largest law enforcement agency in the United States with the best crime lab. So he is going to have a ton of help. I'm sure that they did plenty of work, and there's probably much more to follow.
We have never, and we have spoken about this numerous times, the autopsy evidence is not out yet, right? It's never been released, right? So there can be considered to be 4 separate crime scenes. And what do I mean by that? 4 bodies. There's 4 separate bodies. That's 4 separate crime scenes. So all of the work that the pathologist done, who, by the way, a pathologist is a medical doctor. That word coroner is not, there should be a system in the United States that we only use the medical examiner system. The coroner system is not a good system. And Barbara Butcher, who's been on Duty Ron's show 100 times, she's been on this show. She's a real expert on that. She was the chief of staff of the New York City office of the chief medical examiner. She really talks down the coroner system. It's not a good system. The medical examiner system is the most preferred system because the people you're dealing with are medical doctors who do this all the time, all right? So the medical doctor who performed these autopsies, and that, by the way, is where a lot of the evidence is also collected. Evidence underneath the fingernails of the victims, right? Touch DNA on the clothing or on the body. Some of that removed from the body will be the job of the pathologist, all right? The clothing will be taken by crime scene, and that'll be all the evidence from that will be collected by crime scene. So you can see how complicated this can really get. And then any potential evidence that's collected during the autopsy, for example, DNA evidence, has to, of course, be processed correctly so the DNA can go to the proper place to be identified. Now, who better than to collect and categorize and send the DNA to a correct location than a pathologist, a medical doctor? Can any attorney tell the doctor, oh, you didn't do that right? Oh, really? Jacoby and Myers, I think I did do it right. I just gave a plug to Jacoby and Myers, and then anyway, I said that as sort of a little joke. But
Joe Murray's not going to like that.
yeah, Joe Murray won't like that. But so it's very difficult. But yet, the defense will hire their own experts to try to create doubt on the work that a pathologist, a professional medical doctor, will do in collecting this evidence and drawing out. We talked about the anatomical diagrams they do, which will indicate all the stab wounds and the location on the body and whether the stab wounds were in fact fatal or not fatal. And they can tell which ones were fatal. Another thing I just wanted to point out, because many of the people that are working on this, the investigators, the detectives, the FBI, the state police, some are very experienced, some are not. The lead detective on this case happens to not be that experienced. That person is going to spend a lot of time learning and being taught by the pathologist. This is what happened. And the pathologist will explain everything to that detective. And that detective should have attended all 4 of these autopsies. If he didn't, that's a huge mistake by the police department. But he should have been at every single one of these autopsies. Tough for a 2 or 3 year veteran of a police department to go to 4 autopsies of 20 and 21-year-old kids. Really tough to do.
Yeah, but it's what's expected of the assigned investigator. I think you're making a good point, Billy, that he should have attended all 4 of those just to know the details of what took place. Very, very important to figure out, the exact crime scene, to read the crime scene. Once you're inside the location, you're going to get a good picture of what took place based on everything that you see. Now, when you go to the autopsy the next day, the post, you're going to be able to confer with the medical examiner and talk about, what was the wounds that caused the person to expire? How long could the person have been conscious based on these wounds? Could it have been that there was a tremendous struggle or a fight? Could the person have lived for an extended period of time before they expired? All of those questions would be answered at autopsy. And one last thing I wanted to bring up about crime scene experts that the prosecution will be working with. They're going to want to explain how the evidence is recovered, specifically that sheath. That sheath is going to be very, very important to the whole case, because obviously that sheath contained DNA evidence on it that matched Brian Kohlberger's dad. It linked to the dad. It wasn't a match to the dad. It was a link to the dad. It was familiar DNA, which eventually I am sure that a copy of Brian's DNA was taken, a sample of his DNA was taken and compared to that DNA that was recovered from the sheath, and I'm certain it's going to wind up being a match. So again, how was that sheath handled? Where was it recovered? You're going to have pictures and you're going to have video that's going to be shown to the jury, and now you're going to have a crime scene expert that can explain, this is where it was found, this is how we handled it. We swabbed the whole sheath and we swabbed the snap specifically for DNA, and we were successful. We did recover DNA, and that went to the lab, and from the lab it went to the familiar DNA, the searches on the public sites that led to Brian Kohlberger's father, and 99.9% chance that it was the father of the DNA that was recovered off of that sheet. Now he's taken into custody, and that DNA does match his. That's one of the things I think will have to be explained.